Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really going to challenge how you might think about family. Let's maybe set aside those old pictures for a moment.
Yeah, because we're diving into how, our own choices, but also these huge global things are totally reshaping our closest relationships.
Exactly. And this deep dive, it's built on some pretty important sociological thinking, stuff that really questions the traditional ideas of family many of us know.
Right. Our mission really is to unpack some fascinating ideas. Things like chosen families, how love itself is changing, and get this, how the world economy actually plays a role in who looks after our kids.
It sounds like it connects the very personal with the global.
That's it exactly.
Yeah.
It's deeply personal, but also universally connected in ways we might not even realize.
Okay, so where do we start? Let's maybe kick off with this idea called the personal life perspective.
Good place to start. So this came about as a kind of critique of older views, like functionalism or Marxism. They tended to have these quite rigid top-down definitions of what family is.
Right, like a fixed structure with specific roles.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the personal life perspective argued that those views kind of miss the point. They miss the individual experiences, how people actually live family life.
So this perspective flips it. It looks at it from the individual's viewpoint.
Exactly that. The absolute core idea is focusing on how individuals define family for themselves. What meanings do they give their relationships? It's less about a blueprint, more about, well, lived reality.
Okay, so this isn't just fiddling around the edges of the definition then. It sounds like it blows it wide open, going way beyond just, blood relatives or marriage certificate.
Absolutely. It's a really significant shift. It makes space for all sorts of important relationships that people consider family
Mhm.
because they provide that support, that sense of belonging, maybe a shared history.
Like those friends who are basically closer than your cousins?
Totally. The ones you call first in a crisis or who you celebrate the big milestones with, they feel like family, right?
Yeah, definitely. And what about this term fictive kind? Is that part of this?
Yes. Fictive kin fits right in. That's like the close family friend or the neighbor you call auntie or uncle, even though there's no biological link.
Ah, okay. Because they play that kind of family role in your life.
Exactly. Practical help, emotional support, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And it also really highlights things like gay and lesbian chosen families.
Right, networks people build when maybe their biological families aren't supportive.
Precisely. Because of homophobia or rejection, sometimes people have to create their own supportive networks, their chosen families, for that sense of security and belonging. It's crucial.
That's a really powerful example. And does this perspective go even further? Like pets. People often say their pet is family.
It absolutely includes pets for many people, the emotional support, the companionship. For some, that bond is, well, just as significant as any human family tie. The perspective is broad enough to acknowledge that.
Okay, and even people who've passed away.
Yes, even deceased relatives. Their memories, the stories told about them, their sort of continued presence in the family narrative
Mm.
that all shapes family identity long after they're gone.
So on one level, this all feels very freeing. We get to define our own connections. But then Carol Smart comes along with her connectedness thesis. That adds a layer, doesn't it? It suggests we're not completely free agents.
That's a really important point.
Mhm.
Smart kind of pushes back against the idea that we're totally individualized, just floating free and making choices. She argues we're actually embedded in this web of connectedness.
A web of connectedness. What does that mean?
It means our past relationships, our current ones, our responsibilities, our sense of history and belonging, they all influence and, yeah, sometimes limit the choices we make now and in the future. We're not making decisions in a vacuum.
Right. So even if I feel like I'm making a totally independent choice about my relationships, I'm still kind of shaped by my history, my gender, my social class.
Exactly. Think about mothers often staying more connected to kids after a divorce. That's often shaped by traditional gender roles and expectations about childcare, right?
Right.
It's not just a purely personal choice. It's shaped by that connectedness.
That makes a lot of sense. It's freedom, but within a context.
Precisely. It's a more nuanced picture of how we navigate our personal lives.
Okay, so we've seen how individuals are redefining family, but what happens when that individual choice becomes like the defining feature of society itself? This brings us towards postmodernism, doesn't it?
It does. Postmodernism looks at society as, well, rapidly changing, fragmented, really diverse. And individual choice is front and center, the key idea. There's no single normal family type calling the shots anymore.
So the old model, the nuclear family, it's not the only game in town. It's more like a kaleidoscope.
That's a great way to put it. A kaleidoscope of family forms. You see traditional structures kind of breaking down or becoming less dominant, and this explosion of diversity.
Mm.
Lone parent families, step families, same-sex couples, people living alone, couples cohabiting without marriage. It's just much more varied.
And this ties into the individualization thesis from people like Anthony Giddens and Ulrich Beck.
Yes, very much so. They really explored this idea of heightened individual choice. Giddens, back in '92, talked about confluent love and the pure relationship.
Okay, break those down for us. Pure relationship.
He argued that relationships were shifting away from being based on, say, duty or economic need, like they often were traditionally. Instead, they're becoming pure relationships,
You're pure in what sense?
purely based on emotional and sexual satisfaction for both partners. It's driven by what he called consulant love,
Hmm.
a love that's active, conditional, and only lasts as long as both people feel fulfilled.
Wow. So love isn't necessarily till death do us part anymore. It's more. As long as this works for both of us.
Pretty much. It makes relationships potentially more fulfilling moment to moment, but also inherently more fragile. It's not automatically for life.
Which leads to maybe more breakups, more serial monogamy.
That's the term Giddens used, yeah. A pattern of sequential, committed relationships. And then Beck, also around the same time, talked about us living in a risk society.
A risk society. How does that relate to family?
Beck's idea was that traditional norms and institutions, church, community, even family structures, have less sway over us. We have fewer fixed rules to follow.
So we're kind of making it up as we go along more.
In a way, yes. We face more choices, more uncertainties, more risks. And we have to actively negotiate our relationships rather than just slotting into predefined roles. This leads to what he called the negotiated family.
The negotiated family. So less stable perhaps, but more democratic?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
It offers members more choice, more say in how things run. But that constant negotiation, that lack of fixed scripts, can also make it feel less stable, more precarious.
So there's this real tension, isn't there? This massive increase in choice gives us freedom, but it also brings, well, uncertainty, risk. Relationships might not last.
That's the paradox right there. The freedom to choose also means the freedom to leave and the possibility that others will leave us. It demands a different kind of emotional work, I suppose.
Okay, so we've got individual choice, pure relationships, negotiated families, all reshaping things from the inside out. But these choices, they aren't happening in some kind of bubble, are they?
Not at all. That brings us to the next big piece of the puzzle, globalization. These huge worldwide forces are also massively impacting families.
Right, globalization, we hear that word a lot. How does it connect directly to, like, the family unit?
Well, globalization is basically about the increasing interconnectedness of societies everywhere, and that connection profoundly shapes family life. Think about migration, for instance.
Okay, people moving across borders. How does that change the family itself? Are we seeing new kinds of family structures because of it?
Absolutely. It creates what sociologists call transnational families. That's where family members are actually living in different countries, but they try to maintain close ties emotionally and often financially.
Like parents working abroad and sending money home.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
a classic example. It creates these complex dynamics of separation, connection, reunion. And that migration also obviously increases diversity within countries like the UK. You get more varied family structures, different cultural practices taking root, maybe more extended families living together or close by in some communities.
And you mentioned something earlier, global care chains. That sounds quite striking.
It really is. It highlights a specific, often hidden consequence of globalization. There's a growing demand in wealthier countries for paid help, childcare, elder care, domestic work.
Okay.
And often this work is done by women, frequently mothers, who migrate from poorer countries. So you get this chain. A woman from, say, the Philippines cares for children in the U.S. or the U.K., while her children back home are cared for by another relative, maybe a grandmother or an aunt.
Wow. So one person's ability to work, often in a caring role, depends on another woman filling that gap back home.
Precisely. It shows how global inequalities directly impact the most intimate bonds, like between a mother and child, often across vast distances. It's a really stark example of global connection and, frankly, global inequality.
That really makes you think. And despite these huge distances, technology must play a role in keeping these transnational families linked.
Oh, it's absolutely crucial. Things we take for granted, like video calls, social media, instant messaging. They are lifelines for maintaining relationships across continents. It doesn't erase the distance, but it helps bridge it.
And what about the economy more broadly, like job security?
Economic globalization definitely plays a part. Increased job insecurity in one country can destabilize families. Or the pressure of global competition might lead to lower wages, the so-called race to the bottom, forcing both parents to work longer hours, or, again, prompting one parent to migrate for better paid work elsewhere.
So economic pressures can literally pull families apart geographically.
They certainly can, yes. It links global economics directly to family decisions and structures.
And culturally, does the spread of, say, Western ideas have an impact?
Yes, that's cultural globalization. The spread of ideas about individualism, consumer culture, changing views on gender roles, these can travel globally and influence family norms and expectations everywhere.
Which might clash with more traditional values in some places.
Exactly. It can lead to tensions, particularly between generations, as global ideas meet local traditions. Families have to navigate these cultural shifts too.
And finally, all this movement and change must affect demographics, right? Population numbers and structures.
Definitely. Globalization impacts birth rates, death rates, and especially international migration patterns. All of this feeds into changing the population structure of places like the UK, age profiles, ethnic diversity, which in turn shapes the overall picture of what families look like.
What a journey. We've really gone from those kind of fixed old school ideas of family right through to seeing them as these fluid, personally defined connections, profoundly shaped by these massive global trends.
Yeah, it's a long way from the simple mom, dad, and two kids model being the only thing we talk about. The reality today is just so much more dynamic, complex, and, well, constantly changing.
It really challenges us to look beyond the surface, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So maybe a final thought for you to take away. In this world where family feels increasingly like something we choose or create, and where these huge global forces are constantly kneading and reshaping our closest bonds, what does that mean for us? What new responsibilities or perhaps freedoms does this give you in how you build and look after your own connections? Something to think about.
Definitely something to ponder.